Welcome everybody to this afternoon session on responsible human resource development that is organized by the Human Resources Action Group. This is the first session of actually 2 consecutive sessions. My name is Patricia and I will be moderating this first session. Perhaps we don't have much time. We have 1 hour and we have a lot of things that we want to share with you. The first thing is always the administrative things. As you see, it's a webinar type, so that means that the speakers, the panelists will be speaking and be visible. The other participants are muted and have no camera, but, and this is the good thing, you see that we have a chat function and a Q&A function in the session. So feel free to use the chat function if you have any technical issues or comments, and please use the Q&A function for asking questions. The questions, it will only be the panelists and the hosts seeing them. So be patient. They are not lost. They are in the Q&A interface and we will answer them. And then you will also see once they have been answered. Now, with those admin remarks, I guess some more people joined. So let's get right into the session. Welcome again. I'm very happy to have our panelists and the audience around the table today. A little word on the organizer of the session, that is the European Microfinance Platforms Action Group on Human Resources that was founded almost 4 years ago with the goal to really promote responsible HR practices in the financial inclusion sector. We have done a bit of work over these last 3, a bit more years, and what you are listening today is actually the results of not just like a few months work, but the results of work that spread over more than 2 up to 3 years. So what do we want to do today? Oops, I need to find the right click here that I can move the slides. Yes. To kick off the session, we'll introduce all the panelists, and then we want to familiarize you with a tool for human resources management, basically the talent management cycle, which was a tool underlying a survey that the Action Group did on human resource development practices in the microfinance sector. We will share with you results from that survey, and then we go into the practical part of the session and we'll hear from colleagues from the Philippines and Tajikistan, their perspectives on current human resources practices. And then we will hear from the SPTF linking to other sector initiatives. And with that, I already revealed who will be some of the speakers today in the session. On the one hand, we have Elisabeth Niendorf from ADG, who is together with me co-head of the Action Group. We will have Cheryl Frankiewicz of 9 Buckets, who has been our lead consultant in over the last years. She's a learning and change consultant. We have Sarvinos Ganyeva from Bank Arvand. We have Joy Santos from ASKI from the Philippines. And we have Laura Foos from the Social Performance Task Force. So welcome, everyone of the speakers. This is a ladies only panel. I rarely have these panels. So this is, I think, also an innovation, at least for me, that we only have ladies here. Now, then let us just, after these quick introductions, move on. And I would like to hand over to Elisabeth for framing the conversation a bit by presenting the talent management lifecycle.
Thank you, Patricia. And actually, why we do this this little exercise here, before we are going to hear from Cheryl about the results of the survey that Patricia just mentioned, we would like to introduce this little tool here. Why? Because it has been the basis for how the whole survey was framed. So we thought it's worth having a quick look before we look into the results. So yes, the talent management lifecycle is a tool that has been developed in 2018 by ADG to systemize the elements of human resource management. And well, from our work with microfinance institutions worldwide, we've actually learned one thing, and that is HR is a key success factor for microfinance institutions. And why is this? Because they are service sector organizations. So you can ask the questions, who actually interacts with the customers on a daily basis? Who answers concerns, requests, queries? Who develops new products and services? And finally gets the customers excited about them? Well, the answer to all those questions is it's the employees. So the way that an MFI really approaches HR has a direct impact on gaining and maintaining a competitive advantage in the market. And now you can ask the question, but what can the MFI do to attract and retain talent? And here comes the talent management lifecycle into play, because it offers some interesting insights in how to do this. It basically describes, and you can see this here on the slide, the basic stages that any employee in a microfinance institution goes through during his or her time working for the MFI. So starting from attraction and recruitment, going through onboarding, then performance management, remuneration, of course, development, but also succession planning, retention, hopefully, and at some point, exit from the organization. And moreover, on the bottom of the slide, you can see that this tool also highlights the importance of HR strategies, HR policies, as well as functions, which are actually guiding and supporting talent management on each of the stages. And the purpose always is to achieve business goals as well as social performance indicators. And actually, we are convinced that HR has a strategic role to play to make sure an MFI really can implement its strategy and achieve its financial as well as social targets. And if you're interested in this topic, like strategic HR, please have a look at the session description on the conference platform. And there you can find a document on strategic HR, where you are going to be able to see some more details on this specific topic. And with this, I'm happy to hand over to Cheryl.
Great, thank you very much, Elizabeth, Patricia. Before I dive into the survey results, I'd like to provide a bit of background on the survey's design and implementation. You'll see on the next slide, the survey had two main objectives. The first one was to map current practices among MFIs worldwide. And the second was to shed some light on the relationship between those practices and MFI performance. The survey wasn't designed to prove causality or to measure the strength of specific relationships. It was designed to explore each stage of the talent management lifecycle that Elizabeth just described, and to investigate whether there were some HR practices that seemed to impact MFI performance more than others. If we found interesting relationships, then more rigorous research could follow. That was the idea. The survey had 68 questions, all multiple choice or quantitative except for two, and it was administered by a survey monkey in Arabic, English, French, Lao, Russian, and Spanish. It was launched in late November of last year, and it remained open until the end of February this year. We received 342 responses, 195 of which met the criteria to be included in the final data set. I won't go into great detail, but the next slide gives you a sense of the overall respondent profile. 42% of respondents operate in sub-Saharan Africa, 23% in Southeast or Southeast Asia and the Pacific, 18% in Latin America and the Caribbean, 15% in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, and 6% in the Middle East and North Africa. 16% operate in more than one country, 24% work with agents. The majority of respondents have been in operation for at least 10 years. They've been profitable in at least 4 out of the last 5 years, and they offer both credit and savings products. Their market share is increasing, and they are publicly committed to both social and financial objectives. As I mentioned, the first objective of the survey was to map the current landscape of HR practices among financial service providers working in financial inclusion. To meet this objective, we prepared a survey report that summarizes the responses to all 68 questions. It follows the same structure as the survey itself, with sections that focus on the different phases of the talent management lifecycle. Each section has multiple charts and tables that present the data in a pretty straightforward manner. This slide highlights a few examples of the data points that you'll find in the report, but I'm not going to go through them because I want to spend the time that we have today discussing our analysis of the data. If you download the survey report, then you can explore the data points that interest you. And Patricia is going to put a link in the chat box for me that'll make it easy for you to access that document. Thanks, Patricia. What I want to focus on in the time we have today is the survey's second objective. I'd like to make some observations about the relationship between current HR practices and MFI performance. What do the data tell us about the relationship and the actions that we might take to strengthen it? To answer this question, I'm going to draw from respondents' answers to the only 2 open-ended questions on the survey. The first question asked respondents about the HR practices that have contributed most to their organization's success. And the second question asked respondents what hinders their organization's human resource development. I'm also going to share some of the results from our segmentation analysis. This was an important part of the research initiative because there are so many factors that can influence performance and so many different ways to define success. We wanted to explore whether there are any HR practices that seem to be associated with multiple attributes of performance. For example, profitability, market share, scale, or employee turnover, regardless of an organization's age, type, or region. We did find a few, and I'll share these at the end of the presentation. What I'd like to start with are the results of the open-ended questions, because those are the ones that capture respondents' own words and priorities. If you look at the left side of this chart, you'll see the factors that were mentioned by respondents. On the right-hand side of the chart, you'll see colored bars that indicate the number of times that each factor was mentioned. In orange, you'll see the number of times that it was mentioned as a success factor. And in green, you'll see the number of times they were mentioned as a hindering factor. The factors are ranked in order of the number of times they were mentioned, either as a success factor or as a hindering factor, because both types of observations are important. If we focus on the orange bars, the success factors first, you'll see that culture and work environment was the most frequently mentioned factor. You'll see it highlighted in yellow, I hope, in just a minute, yeah. Learning and development opportunities, referred to here as L&D, were next, followed by employee engagement and communication. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is that even though the survey was designed to follow the talent management lifecycle, the specific actions taken at each stage of the TMLC appear less important than the overall environment created by an organization's people, structure, and policies. If you look down the list of factors, you'll see recruitment practices near the bottom with only 3 mentions. Onboarding and succession planning weren't mentioned at all. Retention is mentioned just 8 times. And even if you put compensation, benefits, and incentives all together in the same category, that category only gets 20 mentions. This isn't to say that the actions at each stage of the talent management lifecycle are not important, they are. But what seems more important is creating work and workspaces that employees want to be a part of. Learning and development opportunities are clearly important, but their impact on performance is more complex than this chart suggests, as we'll see in the next slide. My second observation, based on the survey data, is that increased investment in learning and development opportunities can be associated with higher employee turnover. The chart in the middle of the slide shows that 46% of MFIs with a turnover rate above 12% provide employees with more than 4 days of training a year. That is 50% higher than MFIs with a turnover rate of 12% or less. Of course, L&D opportunities refer to more than training. They could be coaching, mentoring, shadowing, self-study, for example. So we also looked at the results of another survey question, which you'll see on the third chart. They're not as stark, but still, the results show that turnover seems to be higher among MFIs whose employees commit to professional development goals. And we found this problematic because L&D opportunities are such an important factor of success. You see them at the very top of the chart. So that made us wonder whether any of the MFIs that participated in the survey were investing significantly in L&D, but not experiencing higher than average turnover. If so, what were they doing differently? We dove back into the data and found 22 MFIs that met these criteria. Analyzing these results, we found 4 HR practices that seemed to make a difference. First, hiring from within. Second, having formal grievance mechanism. Third, performance management techniques, targets and training for supervisors. And fourth, L&D measures that reward performance. You'll see those listed on the slide. If we look at the list, that chart again, and focus on the green bars, we'll see that the most frequently mentioned factor hindering human resource development among respondents is the structure and capacity of the HR function within organizations. Respondents that commented on this area said that HR staff lack the skills and/or systems to fulfill their function effectively. A few commented on insufficient staffing or the lack of an HR department. The second largest factor hindering HR development is a lack of financial resources. Some of the respondents that commented on this area referred to their organization's overall lack of resources, while others focused on the portion of their organization's budget that was allocated to HR development. The third major hindering factor is a lack of alignment between HR practices and business strategy. I've drawn this out as a separate observation because this factor was also among the top 5 factors of success. I don't know if you noticed that when we were looking at the orange bars. It seems that when HR activities align with business strategy, HR is valued and it delivers value. The function sits at the decision-making table, it's listened to and has the support of the board and top management. It understands the business and is able to recruit and develop employees that achieve organizational goals. Managers support HR activities because they see their value. But when HR activities are not aligned with business strategy, managers don't see them as valuable and don't make an effort to support them. They don't provide the input that HR needs to be able to contribute strategically. The survey data make it clear that there are different approaches to HR development and more than one can be effective, but only if HR practices align with business priorities. The last observation I'll highlight focuses on the L&D and performance management functions. We saw in previous slides that survey respondents found L&D opportunities and performance management systems to have a major impact on their organization's success. What's interesting is that most survey respondents rely heavily on employee supervisors to implement both of these functions. Yet only 1/3 of respondents provide supervisors with HR development targets and training on how to assess skills and provide feedback. The survey data suggests that this is a weakness. The chart on this slide illustrates the positive relationship that seems to exist between the provision of performance management guidance and organizational profitability. There's another chart in the survey report showing a similar relationship between the provision of performance management guidance and market share. The data suggests that it would be worthwhile for MFIs to provide supervisors with more performance management guidance. In other words, to build their capacity to fulfill their HR roles. The observations I've highlighted, together with others, led us to identify 5 areas in which financial inclusion stakeholders might want to act in an effort to strengthen the relationship between HR development and MFI performance. Once we identified these areas, we interviewed 7 MFIs that had participated in the survey and had indicated that they had already taken action in one or more of these areas. We wanted to find out more about what they did and why it was effective. Thankfully, they agreed to have their experiences published in a series of blogs on the e-MFP website, so anyone who's interested in taking action can be inspired by what has worked for them. We're very fortunate to have 2 of the 7 MFIs represented on the panel today, so you can look forward to hearing from them in just a few minutes. I'll just quickly run through the 5 opportunities for action. The first one won't surprise you. It's strengthening the alignment between HR development and business strategy. The blog that explores this theme was published on October 22nd and focuses on specific actions that case study MFIs have taken to better align their HR practices with business strategy. The second area for action focuses on measurement. You may recall that the 2 biggest barriers to human resource development were a lack of financial resources and weaknesses in HR management structures and capacity. There's really only 2 ways to address these barriers. One is to make better use of the resources that exist, and the other is to argue more effectively for additional resources. Both strategies require that the value of HR development initiatives be measured. So how are MFIs doing this? That's what the second blog is all about, which was published at the end of last month. The third area focuses on employee engagement. And we saw that culture and work environment have a powerful impact on performance. So what are MFIs doing to create the kind of work and workspaces that employees want to be a part of? That's explored in the third blog, which was published in 2 parts earlier in November. Patricia is going to put a link to all of those blogs in the chat box. So once again, it'll be easy for you to access them if you're curious. The fourth opportunity for action lies in making it easier for managers to fulfill their HR development role. And that blog will be published in December sometime. The fifth area for action does not have a blog associated with it, but it's something that everyone can do fairly easily by benchmarking their current HR practices to data found in the survey. In particular, there's 10 HR practices that were commonly associated with strong MFI performance, regardless of region, organizational type, age, size, or product portfolio. And you'll see those 10 practices on, you'll see those 10 practices on this slide. I'll just quickly run through them and then leave it open for questions. I think that'll be the most interesting way to probe the ones that you would like more information about. The first one, as you'll see here, the most senior HR representative reports directly to the board of directors, CEO, or most senior management executive. Number 2, HR development strategy is reviewed annually to ensure its alignment with business strategy. The third, recruitment and selection procedures are clearly documented and adhered to. Number 4, new hires are oriented to relevant policies and procedures, as well as the organization's vision and values. 5, the organization segments its human resources and defines human resource development strategy for each key segment. 6, the rate of turnover and the reasons for employee exit are analyzed at least once per year, disaggregated by segment. 7, managers have clear HR development targets and receive training on how to assess skills and provide feedback. 8, employees are involved in setting their performance targets, gauging the necessity of learning and development measures to support their achievement of those targets and evaluating their performance against those targets. 9, employee satisfaction is measured and the results are shared annually. And last but not least, number 10, a formal grievance system enables employees and/or agents to raise workplace concerns in a confidential manner and tracks their resolution. Patricia, back to you.
Thank you, Cheryl, for this super rich summary of what was quite an undertaking. The survey itself, rolling it out, getting the data and then analyzing the task that Cheryl did and putting it together in a very digestible manner. So I think a big thank you from the whole action group, Cheryl, to you for having done that. We have reached kind of a pause button in the session because this was quite happy, but super interesting. And we wanted to ask if there are some questions in the audience that Cheryl should clarify regarding the survey results. In the chat box, I do not think that I have seen something here. Elizabeth, in the Q&A function, has any question arrived there yet?
Not yet, Patricia.
Okay. Looking at the time, perhaps we pause for 10 more seconds. And if we do not see any question pop up, I'd rather that we then move on and go to two more beautiful voices. So chat box, check. Nothing arrived. Q&A box, check. Elizabeth?
I think we can move on for the moment.
Perfect. Then let's do exactly that. And with that, we do a quick switch. So now we had the survey results really summarized from across the world, and we want to dive a little bit into experiences from the Philippines and from Tajikistan. And I am very happy to welcome our two speakers, Joy Santos from ASKI. I think most of us have heard about ASKI, have seen ASKI. ASKI is around for quite a while, since 1986. It's registered with the Security and Exchange Commission. ASKI is a non-stock, non-profit organization in the Philippines that's committed to the promotion and development of micro and small to medium enterprises and delivery of social services. At the moment, there are 10 strategic business units under the ASKI group of companies. So quite a number of services can actually be delivered by this group of companies. And here we have also listed these services on the screen. It's definitely not an exhaustive list, but it's microfinance, it's micro insurance, savings products, green energy loans, community development, and an education program. So really quite a range from financial to non-financial services. ASKI in the Philippines has 95 offices spreading across 16 provinces and 256 towns and 3,624 villages, with an outreach of more than 130,000 people. Looking at the share of active borrowers, the majority is female clients, almost 3/4, and 1/4 male clients. I very quickly also move on to present the second organization. We have Sarvinos Ganyeva representing the bank, and she will engage in the panel discussion. Bank Arvand is a bank in Tajikistan, providing financial services of high quality to entrepreneurs with the purpose of stimulating the economic and social growth of the country. The vision of the bank really is to be this leading dynamic sustainable microfinance bank, embracing innovations. And probably this is what we all need these days, innovations, the world that we are in. In terms of some numbers also here, staff numbers, Bank Arvand has 548 male staff members and almost 400 female staff members. In terms of agents, and this is interesting because the bank also has an agent network, 38 8 male and 34 female agents that reach out to, and we have it on the slide here, to almost 50,000 clients, a bit more male clients than female clients. And the services that the bank is providing is basically loans with no pledge that allow low-income families and micro entrepreneurs to increase their income and improve their living standards. Other services include deposit accounts, remittances, currency exchange, cash management, training, consultations. So again, we have this mix of financial and non-financial services. And the bank has 77 representative offices across the country, and we see some concentration in one part of the country. And with that, I want to stop with the presentations of the two financial institutions and jump right into the questions. And this is a question that I would like to ask both Joy and Savinos. Why did your institutions actually participate in the global survey? And perhaps we can start with Joy.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from the Philippines. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Cheryl and Elizabeth, for the presentation. My name is Divina Gracia Santos from the Philippines, and currently I am working both on the Human Resource Research and Corporate Planning Department of ASKI. I participated in the survey to learn new perspective on HR development and management, since this is a global survey, and of course, to do a self-evaluation and measure our own organization in terms of the global standards, and to help us identify ways that we can still improve. And lastly, responding to a global survey is very helpful to us, as it was able to provide us, the respondent, to be cognizant of the new and relevant HR metrics given the scenario of the global health crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy, and also for reminding everybody your position. I think I skipped over that in the introduction. Apologies for that. Savinos, perhaps you jump in with that same information and then answer the first question. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good evening, good day for everybody. Now, for us to take a questionnaire, especially a global one, is to look from the outside and analyze our activities. Answering to the questions, we ask ourselves how we can improve our activity. Also, finding answers to the various questions gives us a direction to change in our behaviors. Especially the field of HR, human resources, work with people does not stand still, and we are always looking for the best practice areas for staff development, trainings, and increasing employer satisfaction and engagement. Thanks.
Thank you for those kick-off insights why you participated. Perhaps we are just moving on, Joy, with you. The global survey results suggest that aligning HRD practices to the MFI's overall organizational strategy is key. Cheryl really explained this very nicely. So how did ASKI succeed in establishing the HR department really as a strategic advisor and business partner, leaving behind this perception of HR being a purely administrative activity?
Our HR department plays a very vital role in the strategic planning of the institution, and we contribute in the design and the development of having a coherent approach for all the business direction of ASKI as a financial service provider. And during review and annual planning of the microfinance performance and even the other business, strategic business institution of ASKI, including the review of the other non-financial services, this usually happens at before the end of each year. HR department has a big stake in terms of ensuring that we will work together with each of the unit, especially the biggest, which is the microfinance, in goal or target setting. And we agreed on setting parameters that would ensure productive results for our managers, our loan officers, and even the back office support personnel. We make sure that our HR team contributes in the design and development of a logical approach to the management of the most important asset, which is our people. And at the HR department, we trained the team to recommend and participate actively in crafting new policies, schemes for our employees' welfare, learning and development of our talents, which is very, very important, and not just merely conducting training needs assessment, but analysis of the result is very vital. Crafting of the mutually supporting and integrated HR policies and practices for the whole institution, including safety and health of our employees. We do that in the HR. And we have a dedicated section for employees' occupational health and safety program under the HR department. And lastly, I always make sure that my team is clarified that human resource development and management is not just the role per se of the HR department. We involve our line managers in human resource development by providing them sessions on HR practices. And HR department key heads, including me, together with my team, we lead in providing knowledge sharing sessions, coaching to our line managers, especially on the required regulations of our country on employees management, welfare, and labor relations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. That was super rich. And I think we could see from your talking really this linking and this back and forth. It's not just an HR department, but everybody in the organization is responsible for
Yes.
human resources management.
Involving everyone, the key leaders, yeah.
Exactly. And with that, I would like to dive into the next question, this time to Servinos. Organizational development shows us that really trust, shared values, and open communication are key to implement business strategies. How is Bank Arvand nurturing and protecting its organizational culture? And what role does the HRD department play in this process?
Thank you. We have a good saying. It means if the builder has placed a crooked brick, right, the house will be crooked to the end. The corporate culture in Arvand dates back to the time of its foundation 20 years ago. Back then, unspoken values, cultures, and behaviors were adopted, and which were then formalized. For us and for everybody, employer in Bank Arvand is a big family. And we take every new employer as a new member of the family, and we guide them, develop, support, and stimulate their achievements. Each employer feels its importance, freedom of choice, and realization of themselves and their ideas. Besides for supports of corporate culture, HR holds different events like team buildings, trainings, sport events, and different holidays for employees and especially for their families, child, and others. Especially the online meeting with the chairman was another step in mentioning the corporate culture, and I think it will be an annual tradition for us. Thank you.
Thank you. You use the word family very often, and when listening to you, I think this is really what is holding it together. This taking care of one another, also having responsibilities, giving responsibility, but also giving joy. Perhaps we stay with you, and we stay in Tajikistan. Because Bank Arvand also has this agent network. Perhaps you could share with us a bit more on what role the agent network really plays in implementing the bank's business strategy. And how does the HR department support these efforts? Servinus, you are muted still.
Sorry. The agent network for us, it's is a link between the client and between the population, we can say, and our bank. They shorten the overlap between the interest of our clients and the interest of banks, while not forgetting about their own benefits, interests. Yeah. In order for audience to properly present Bank Arvand, they actively involved with the local managers. They are trained, advised, and guided. We also see potential and future loan officers as agents, and experience shows that the effectiveness of this method. Also, practice shows that the loan officer we hire from among agents show a good results because they have experience in attaching clients and services them. They know before they are hired to the bank, expect from them and its effects and to our turnover rate. For example, one student who worked at the agent for 2 months was hired to the loan officer. Within the few months of her effective performance, she successfully came to another. Now she is working like a underwriting position in our branch. It is worth nothing for that with the transition of digital financial services, we will expand the agent network. In addition to attracting clients, they will offer cash in and cash out services, especially in remote rural areas where there is no need to open representatives' offices. Thank you.
Thank you, Servinus. This was nice linking this also now to digitization processes. Very interesting. And also with this growing responsibility. And what I find really amazing is that you're using already the agent network that you have to also grow them and make them part of the staff of the institution if they show that they have the potential for this growth, which is actually slightly different to what we have seen several years ago in other parts of the world, where when there were budget cuts in MFIs, where decisions were taken the other way around in order to reduce operational costs, then staff was being sent away and then rehired as agents. So it is very good to see a positive development the other way around. So that's a very nice example. And you actually already put the seed for my next question to Joy, which is exactly related to technology. And Joy, for ASKI, we have heard already about information technology and the influence on HR processes here. But perhaps you could share with us, how did ASKI use information technology to support and facilitate human resources development in general, and perhaps with a few especially on the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay. Thank you again, Patricia, for this question. I'm very excited to always share this. Even before the pandemic, our institution, ASKI, developed our own human resource information system. So it's a homegrown system, the HRIS. Primarily, this is to monitor the employees' data, profile management, extracting reports of significant HR metrics. And now, during the most challenging times of community lockdowns in the regions where we operate during the hardest period of the COVID-19, we were able to make optimum use of technology through the mobile apps for the employees' management of leave of absence, attendance management, and we were able to use IT even in the management and monitoring of the salaries and other benefits. And for the microfinance, the performance management system of the field personnel. We were able to optimize the use of mobile payment platform in paying their employees incentives, transportation allowances, their benefits, among others. And as most organizations did during the hardest period of the lingering, the effect of the pandemic, we enabled a flexible work arrangement or work from home scheme for our loan officers through our internally developed loan management system. So loan renewal is done through this system, allowing our loan officers to still work from home productively, and the monitoring through the virtual exchanges of the managers and the supervisors are being done to really gauge that they are working despite that they are at home. Because imagine they used to be at the field, but now they can work at their home through this loan management system. And of course, our learning and development program continues even without face-to-face event, just like this one. We're imagining we are in Europe. Even without the face-to-face event, we continue with our virtual learning sessions from the head office to the branch offices, connecting the head office to the branch offices. And we have our online recruitment portal even before the pandemic. So the recruitment portal is already being used by our recruitment section. And during the pandemic, the use was optimized, including having a virtual induction program onboarding for our new employees. They are at their own location in the branches and we are at the head office, so we can still continue with the commitment that we've made in the goals that we would like to really ensure that new employees will be onboarded properly. So it is very important that to stay relevant in the challenges of the new normal, ASKI optimize the use of technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy, for walking us through that. And I think what we can really learn from what you said again is you already had a system in place that allowed you to build on and then deal with really these unforeseen challenges that our world entered into. Now it is almost 2 years ago, if we think back. So thank you for sharing those very practical elements. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Sarvinos.
Thank you also that we have the chance to share. Thank you. Welcome.
These were my questions to the two of you. I am sure our audience is already thinking of more questions. So don't run away, stay tuned. But before we get to the Q&A session, I would like to again welcome Laura Foos, Executive Director of the Social Performance Task Force. This time, I don't forget to do that. Welcome, Laura. And you are here for a very specific reason. Because the e-MFP action group is not working in isolation, actually, on the topic of human resources. And we know that the SPTF has done a lot of work on social performance management, on standards, on indicators, and the latest revision process has also been going on for a while now. And perhaps you could share with us, a bit stepping out also from this action group perspective, what are those links to other sector initiatives that you also see, and how do they go together? So how do they influencing one another and basically making 1 + 1 = 3 and not only 2?
Great question. And Patricia, you're a masterful moderator. I love how you're tying all these groups together in presentations. So delighted to be here today. It's really a privilege to help to close out this session. SPTF has been very aligned with what's been presented today because our view is that human resource development, you basically can't have a truly effective business unless you treat your employees responsibly. It's always been a central tenet to the universal standards. So it's been wonderful to hear from Sarvinos and Joy about the success that they're having with their employees. Specifically to your question, SPTF is excited to continue to amplify and promote responsible human resource development practices in the financial inclusion sector. In particular, we're in the last stages of updating the universal standards for social and environmental performance management, as Patricia mentioned. And from the very beginning of this resource group, the HR action group at e-MFP, we joined forces because SPTF and ILO believe very much, rather than reinventing the wheel, that we should build on each other's efforts and to bring what we know is successful and what seem to be the emerging trends in the industry and bring that all into one place. So the management standards that we have, the universal standards, they're developed by and for the financial inclusion industry so that everything is grounded in practice. And they will include standards on responsible human resource development. We have standards now organized also like the talent management life cycle. That's been a great evolution of what our Dimension 5 now looks like. We have standards on hiring, training, protecting, incentivizing employees so that they understand your social mission and are prepared to carry out that mission. A particular practice and dimension in the new Dimension 5 that I really like is that we have a section that focuses on the provider giving employees formal opportunities to communicate with their management, having that dialogue and really having that detailed description of how organizations can encourage that. We've seen trends of that in the market, trends that are leading to greater attention to HR. This came about during COVID and lots of lessons learned that organizations that had invested in their employees tended to be more resilient during the pandemic. We're hearing trends of worker power through social media platforms that are elevating the voice of employees and customers. I mentioned the other day in our opening about the standards that the fastest growing element of ESG, the fastest growing factor in ESG is actually S, which is the social. And it's because of this elevated voice now that we're seeing from employees and from customers, and that CEOs and shareholders are paying attention to what they have to say. So having these systems in place to really listen to your customer, your internal customer, we call employees the internal customer, are really important. We also have a standard that focuses on developing a system that supports your social strategy. So as Cheryl outlined, that was one of the key elements. So one of the things that you will see in the standards and practices is that they incorporate many of the learnings that Cheryl outlined from her analysis of this group. In addition to updating the standards themselves, we are updating the guide. We have an implementation guide that provides step-by-step guidance for organizations. And of course, we will be including this analysis that has been conducted and presented today. We also are doing a social performance management essentials series with the ILO, where we've featured 3 case studies since September on effective HR management policies. And so the guide, our resource center, are going to be including real field examples, like what you heard from ASKI and Bank Arvand today, because we know that the feedback we get is that FSPs learn best by seeing what others are doing as well. So we will help to highlight, the different deliverables that are coming out of e-MFP through this action group with the blog, and when we release our standards as well. So we're a large global network of all types of financial service providers, and we're going to continue to amplify the importance of HR development with that broader audience. So I look forward to hearing any questions. I'm going to put into the chat box.
Thank you, Laura, for bringing it together and also for filling the chat box with more substance. Thank you so much for pulling these different industry efforts together. And I think this is where we really see this 1 + 1 = 3 or even more, because the survey was just a kick off for something, collecting and getting a feeling, getting the landscape done, having the case studies that are already on the e-MFP blog is giving it more practical feelings, having Joy and Sarvinos here sharing their experience as well, and then with the SPTF bringing it together in basically practical tools that are relevant for the whole sector. This is what we can build on also moving forward. So this is really wonderful to see that happening. I just checked also the chat box. I haven't seen any comment or request for clarification. Elizabeth, is there anything in the Q&A box?
No, Patricia. There is, however, if there are more questions, there is a session that is directly linked and coming afterwards. So everyone is also invited to participate in the second session, where we will also have the chance to exchange and maybe take one or the other question to be answered.
So you jumped already to the very last slide. Thank you. I look at the time. I think we actually need to stop, but since we also waited 2 minutes at the beginning, I think it was even 3. Please allow me 3 more words and then 1 more question. The presentation will be online, and you have links to all the resources that we talked about listed in there, so it's easy to find. The website of the action group, the report, and also the blogs. So I take my hat as the moderator, and I want to ask Cheryl and Joy and Sarvinos and also Laura, just for a 1-sentence answer. We have heard a lot about HR. This is something that's not going away, because HR management will stay with us as long as we have microfinance institutions. So the question is, what do you see as the most important or relevant or surprising or innovative trend that will be with us in the years to come? So to the audience, this is a question that was not prepared, so I am throwing our panelists a little bit in the cold water here. And Cheryl, since you started off, perhaps we start with you, and then we move on to Joy, and then to Sarvinos, and then to Laura.
I knew you were going to do that to me. Technology, the relationship between people and technology within organizations. I think there's tremendous opportunity for technology to make it easier for supervisors to communicate with employees, for employees to communicate with the CEO, with customers to communicate with employees. Like I think we focus on the challenges of digitalization the last few years, but I think moving forward, there's real opportunities within the HR function to take advantage of technology to facilitate communication and engagement. That's what I find most exciting.
Super, thank you. That was a long sentence. Joy, your one sentence.
One sentence, yeah. Just like what I've said in the last question, the need to stay relevant in the scenario now is really the optimized use of technology, the same with what Cheryl shared, because enabling the employees to be digitally transformed and not just on communication, but even on managing not just the data, not just the metrics, but really engaging them by enhancing the connections with them, even if they are not reporting physically in the offices. So it's also optimizing the use of technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Sarvinos, any one trend that you would like to highlight here?
I think HR will be developed on the par with IT technologies, digitalization, and there will be more need for development the soft skills than hard skills. Thank you.
Thank you. And Laura, you have the last trend.
I would have gone with change management and technology, but to reinforce what others have said. But I will go back to what I said. I think it is the beginning of the age of worker power, and we really have to pay attention to our internal customer. And customers will have more of a voice. We see a lot of initiatives that are highlighting places that are good to work and who treat their employees well. And that's especially, I would say, in Latin America, very much what organizations strive to be able to report is that they treat their employees well. So I think people will be paying attention to that.
Thank you. So looking forward, we have digitization technology, we have soft skills, and we have the employees as the first and foremost client out there that we definitely will need to watch out. With that, I don't want to make the session any longer. We are 5 minutes over time. I know we are eating into the coffee break. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, also for organizing, for getting it all together, to Cheryl, to Joy, to Sarvinos, and Laura for sharing, for linking it, and bringing it all together, and to e-MFP for hosting the session as part of the conference, and especially to Joanna for supporting the action group to actually get where it reached now. And with that, it's an invitation to join the subsequent HR session that will start in 9 minutes. So we hope to welcome you there again. And Elizabeth will be taking over in that session. Thank you so much, and see you in 9 minutes.